Welcome back. This is Francisco Rosa. Today's topics include how do you handle rent adjustments, condo fees, and utility adjustments at closing. There are many costs associated with buying a property, and the last thing you need to worry about is getting gypped at closing. You want to make sure you get everything you're entitled to and that all proper credits and adjustments are made. So here are some fine details that you may slip by if you are not cautious at closing. First, let's start off with rent adjustments. Rent adjustments take into account three potential things. First of all, if you're buying an occupied property, you must make sure that you get a credit for the current rent being paid by the tenants. There is a rule in real estate that we use, and it's simple. The buyer gets paid for the day of closing. So you take the monthly rent, divide by either 30 or 31 days. For February, of course, it can be 28 or 29. And then on a per diem basis, the buyer gets a credit for the rent left or remaining in the month. The buyer must also make sure that they get a full credit for any last month's rent, security deposit, plus any accrued interest. And on top of that, if you're working with somebody that knows how to handle their due diligence, your agent or you, if you're handling the transaction yourself, will ensure that the seller has tenants fill out what's called a tenant estoppel certificate, and it's simply a document where the tenant fills out details of their rent. They will express what the current monthly rent is, what they believe the last month's security deposit is, and how much is the security deposit, if any. Now, if there is no deposit, that's fine too. You're simply verifying that the information is accurate. On top of that, prior to closing, you want to make sure that the owner fills out what's called a rent roll. A rent roll is not the tenant giving you the information, but rather the owner. In that situation, it is the owner that will express who the tenants are, how much they're paying, and if they're current, and then on top of that, how much is the security deposit, how much is the last month's rent, if any. You simply want both so that you can match them. You do not want a situation where the tenant says, my security deposit is 1,000, and the owner says, oh, it's 500. You want to clarify those issues because in the future, as the new property owner, you have to handle those situations. Now, if there's a match, you're all set. If there's any discrepancy, you better clear it up so that you have accurate information as you take on the tenant's responsibilities as new owner. Let's move on to the next one. If you're buying a condominium, the closing attorney or settlement agent will ensure that the current monthly condo fee is paid in full and will adjust based on the closing date. The same rule applies. You take the condo fee, divide by the number of days, and then you prorate it, having the buyer pay on the day of closing and giving a credit to the seller, or simply bringing the condo fee current. Moving on, you want to make sure that at closing you have a proper adjustment for oil or propane. Now, if you're great at negotiating, you may be able to get the sellers to just simply give you what's left over, but it can be costly if it was just filled. And that's likely to happen if you're making your purchase in the winter, where a tank of oil or propane can go anywhere from $200 to $500, maybe more, maybe less, depending on the price per gallon. What I would suggest is run with an estimate based on the meter reading, but you want to make sure that it is accurate and functioning. Sometimes they do not work. Even better if you can get a delivery company to come in and provide a written estimate of how much is in there and the current market value for an adequate adjustment.